Israel Update with Gadi and Mike Duran. Hello and welcome to Tablet's Israel Update. It's been 270 days to this war. Today is a Tuesday. It's the 2nd of July. It's 2 days before America's 248th birthday. I'm Gadi in Tel Aviv, and in a new undisclosed location is my co-host, Director of the Center for Peace and Security in the Middle East, Mike Duran. Hi, Mike.
Hello, Gadi. It is undisclosed but very secure. Those who are looking on YouTube can see how secure it is.
I'm greatly relieved. We have a very interesting show for you today, and we will have a few stray strands to tie back into questions regarding Israel's Supreme Court, which is unlike any Supreme Court in any democracy. It is, in fact, in Israel, a kind of an uber government authorized by itself to intervene in anything, and now in subjects that have to do directly with the military and the war. All that after the news bulletin. Over to you, Mike.
Uber government, you mean as in super government, not Uber, the car service.
Not the car service. There was actually a word Uber before the car service, as in Deutschland über alles.
Yes, but now we live in a world, of social media, and anyone who doesn't know who the dead Kennedys are doesn't understand what any of that means.
So why don't you tweet the news bulletin then?
Okay, are you ready?
Yes,
Are you ready? Okay, so and we have 5 items here on the news bulletin, and the first is that the Supreme Court issued a ruling stating that all the Haredim, how do we say that in English?
Haredim, ultra-orthodox.
No, but there's a way that people pronounce it in English. They say Haredi?
Haredim, yeah, Haredim.
The Haredim studying in the yeshivot must be drafted into the army. They will no longer be recipients of government subsidies. And this is causing panic, or one might say rage, inside the Haredi community, and it is threatening the status quo. The political, it's threatening the coalition, is what I mean to say. Second, the IDF began sending more troops and resources to Israel's northern border. And there's a very significant threat of war, of total war breaking out there. This comes with worldwide anticipation over whether there will be an all-out war. And on Sunday, the escalation intensified as Hezbollah initiated a kamikaze drone attack that injured some 18 soldiers, possibly more. 3, there's an internal conflict in Gaza brewing between the clans. This comes with no announcement yet from Israel about what Palestinian entity will be in charge of running Gaza after the war. Tzachi al-Negbi, this is the National Security Advisor of Israel, says that a plan will be released very shortly. 4, the director of the Ashifa Hospital, Mohammed Abu Salmiya, was released back into Gaza by the Shabak, that's the GSS, due to lack of space in Israeli prisons. Many in the government and beyond in Israel have criticized the decision of the Shabak to release him. They did so when under pressure from the Supreme Court, back to the Bagats, to the Supreme Court to provide more living space for prisoners in Israeli detention. Finally, incitement against Netanyahu has reached a fever pitch. Protesters have failed to draw large crowds, but they have made up for the lack of numbers with exuberance. They have attempts to breach barriers in Caesarea and elsewhere, and bonfires on the street. And Gadi, let's play here a clip. I've got a clip here of some of the sounds from the protests. They're really quite shocking. That was, of course, in Hebrew, what the lady was saying is that we have a noose in our hands awaiting the Netanyahu family, and that's what they deserve. I have to say, Gadi, that I was a little bit shocked by that statement. I mean, that really is incitement to murder the prime minister. In the United States, if somebody said such a thing about the president, they would definitely I don't think they would be arrested. They probably wouldn't be arrested. They might be actually, but they would certainly get a visit from the Secret Service to say, what did you mean by that? Do you know that this is a crime? I don't know if it is a crime in Israel, but in the United States, it's a crime to threaten the president with death.
If in Israel, if it would have been right-wing demonstrators saying that, or even less about a left-wing prime minister, they would certainly be in jail. The country doesn't stop talking about the amazing incitement on the eve of Rabin's assassination. It was not 1% of what we now hear regarding Netanyahu, but we have a system of law enforcement that is tilted to one side, and what is allowed to demonstrators on the left is not allowed to demonstrators of the right. Just to give you an example, during the protest of the settlers against the disengagement in Gaza, 700 indictments were issued for protest, for blocking roads and disturbing the public peace. How many were issued against the left all during the years of riot against the reform on these charges? Mike, do you want to take a guess?
I'm going to guess very low, probably around 0. How am I doing?
Bingo. There was one, but it was canceled. And then there were now we received that for other charges, such as attacking police. I think was the charge 28 indictments were issued during the protest over the reform. 21 of them against right-wing protesters protesting the protest, and only 7 against the rioters. They're blocking roads, they're doing anything they want, and with immunity. And also this. So after we were preached endlessly about the horrors of incitement that ended with the assassination of Rabin, now we have incitement on steroids, and it's legitimate because in the eyes of the mainstream press and the judicial system and the attorney general and the chiefs of police, the right wing is never exactly a legitimate government, and so this is how they treat it.
There's something similar here, of course. If you're the January 6th crowd has been prosecuted to an extent that it's really shocking. People who engaged in what was essentially nonviolent protests. It was illegal what they did, but nonviolent. They've been given long prison sentences.
But Mike, everybody knows that the BLM everybody knows that the BLM riots were peaceful protests.
We had a couple of years of Black Lives Matter protests in which there was a lot of violence, including here not here, but I'm in an undisclosed location, but including in Washington, D.C. Very little. There were people who were arrested, but a lot of them were released. Some people were charged with pulling down monuments and so on. But the imbalance is obvious to any fair and impartial observer, I think.
So we should also note that you are in an undisclosed location, but not in Paris, where riots are poised to break up.
I'm not in Paris.
So it's also secure. So let's first discuss the crisis that is hardly intelligible to anything outside Israel, and this is the crisis of the Haredi draft, of the ultra-orthodox draft. So just to lay out the general parameters of what the issue is and why had it turned into a crisis now. So from the beginning of the state, from the founding of the state, the status quo agreement between the ruling Mapai party and the ultra-Orthodox was that students, excellent students of Torah, will be exempt from the draft into the military. They numbered back then around 400. This gradually developed into a full-fledged waiver to all Haredis, and this created a very
Whether
strange
they are
anomaly,
excellent students or not.
or whether they are students or not, because they are supposed to be registered as students, but the requirement that the waiver depends on is that they are not otherwise employed. So what it created was a huge class of loiterers who are not really students, but can't work or have to work in the black market. So everybody understood this is a situation that must be somehow solved. And over the years, there were various government committees which suggested various compromise solutions. Most of them depended on quotas. But quotas are a tricky thing because the Supreme Court observed and then ruled that they were illegal because they have nothing to do with the actual draftee, like the actual person facing the draft. There's no criteria for them to be inside or outside the quota. So these compromises didn't work. Finally, under the left-wing government of Lapid and Bennett, which we had until, what is it now, a year, a little over a year and a half, that government submitted a new law, also including some kind of quota, which was supposed to draft a number, I think it was 4,800 or 3,000, and then 1,800 more. And that that bill wasn't signed into law because the government fell. In Israel, you have to have 3 votes in order to make a bill into a law. We have a single chamber parliament, and it only passed the first calling and was about to become a law, but then the government fell. Now the Supreme Court said that it is impossible to keep not drafting the ultra-orthodox if this is not somehow based in legislation. So the government was given an ultimatum to lemased, to institutionalize this in a proper law. So what the Netanyahu government did, because it knew what it was facing, is said, okay, we'll continue with the bill that we had under the Lapid government. But of course, now the opposition, which then presented the bill, doesn't support it anymore because it wants the government to fall.
Let me just interrupt you for 1 second to point out that Netanyahu's coalition right now depends on ultra-Orthodox parties who are vehemently opposed to the drafting of the ultra-Orthodox.
So this is a
and this is why this is one of the reasons. The 2 reasons why the opposition wants to hammer Netanyahu with this are: 1, after October 7th, there is a tremendous sense in the country that everyone should be, as you said earlier, putting their shoulder underneath the stretcher. And the other reason is that this is damaging to Netanyahu politically at the moment.
Especially the second reason, because the truth is that the IDF cannot draft all the Haredim in time for the probably coming war in Lebanon. It's very complicated to draft Haredim. You need to have separate units for men and women. You need to have facilities for ultra kosher food. You need to take care of people who are already married and with many children. There are because they marry very early. So there are many complications. But
and you're dealing with people that have not developed practical skills over there are very few of them who are auto mechanics or who have skills that the army really needs. I would assume.
Yeah, that's too. We may also note, interestingly, that the mood among the Haredim is slowly changing. They're becoming the rank and file, as opposed to the rabbis, are becoming closer and closer to Zionism, closer and closer to patriotism, and there are actually more and more people who are willing to get drafted. Interestingly, there were 4,000 volunteers, I think, last year from the Haredis to be drafted, and the army ruled out 75% of them for various reasons. So the army is not hungry for the ultra-Orthodox draftees at the moment. So this is, as you pointed out rightly, Mike, it's like a landmine for the Netanyahu government. Enter the Supreme Court. Since this legislation has failed to pass so far, because of the reason you mentioned, the opposition is against it, the Haredim have a problem with it, there's no consensus around it, the Supreme Court ruled that until this is institutionalized in law, everybody has to be drafted, and that any yeshiva where there is not a proper waiver for their students will stop getting government money. And this is the thorny issue, stopping the money for the yeshivas. And so the Supreme Court now intervened in a way that is putting the coalition at risk. I can tell you with great certainty that although all their reasoning was in legalese, they're actually very shrewd politicians. They're very strongly leaning to the left, and wink and nod, they are cooperating with the opposition against the Netanyahu government. What will come out of it is not clear.
But that's the thing that that's so unclear here. And I'm going to make this as a statement because I'm looking at this from afar and I don't know. But I'm really asking you a question. If I were the leader of an ultra-orthodox party, this would put me in a dilemma because I would recognize that whether by intent or effect, I assume like you, it's intent. The Supreme Court has aligned itself with the left and with the secular opponents of the exemption to the ultra-orthodox. So they see that if they were to bring down the Netanyahu government over this draft issue, they could be faced with a new government that is even more hostile to them. It could be a mix of the left wing together with Lieberman, who's really hostile to them, and other elements. And there would be then a kind of national consensus against them, or at least a coalition consensus against them, and that could be a lot worse. So politically, they're in a dilemma because they don't like what Netanyahu is being forced to do, but they recognize that he is being forced. And if they stop supporting him, they may get something that'll be even worse for them. That's how it looks to me. Am I right?
I think that you are generally right, but not everyone thinks so. And I'll tell you why. There's one more loop that we have to do in order to understand this. Benny Gantz, who is the second, he's not the official leader of the opposition, but he's the strongest person in the opposition, famously told the Haredim, with me, you will get anything. Here is a blank page, fill the bottom 2/3, and I'll sign it for you. So their obsession...
Okay, that was before October 7th.
That was earlier. But people are talking about that the left is going to, behind the scene, offer the Haredim whatever they want, and also a pseudo guarantee that the Supreme Court will not intervene when it's a left-wing government.
And this of course is the whole history of the ultra-Orthodox relationship with the political establishment, that they have always held the balance in Israeli politics. So it doesn't matter whether you have a left-wing government or a right-wing government, you always have ultra-Orthodox who are in control of the ministries that will allow them to give lots of subsidies to yeshivot.
So, but here's the caveat. The caveat is the actual voters, because the opposition, after climbing up this tree and demanding shivyon banetel, equality of netel, what would call it?
Load, burden,
the equality of shouldering the burden, of putting your shoulder under the stretcher. After they climb that tree so high, it will be harder for them to give the Haredim anything they want. And secondly, while the old leadership of the Haredim is very much accustomed to being the wheel, deciding which side to support according to their sectorial interest, their voters are increasingly on the right and may be unforgiving to an attempt to sell their votes in exchange for a waiver to the left. So that's where we stand with the Haredim and the coalition. My guess, Mike, this is not going to topple the government. The person here is Aryeh Deri, the leader of the Sephardic Haredim, who is, how should I put it, mildly, incredibly flexible politically, and may be striking deals behind the scene. He's friends with Gadi, for example. He's always been very well connected on all sides. He's very, very sophisticated and can play a role here. Netanyahu, if you've been listening, and I'm sure you have, to his Telegram messages that he delivers in his office, like in short videos, one of which we discussed at length when he revealed that America was withholding ammunitions. So in one of his recent messages, he said, I am asking all members of the coalition to remember this is a time of national emergency, and you should put all sectorial considerations to the side. He's speaking, when he says that, in the voice of the majority of Israelis, and everybody knows that. People will not forgive a divisive election in the middle of a war.
So let me push the analysis that you just presented one step further, and see if I get your agreement with this. That one of the things that's happened in Israeli politics since October 7th, the big divide between left and right, for most of the last 2 or 3 decades, has been the question of a two-state solution, concessions to the territorial concessions to the Palestinians in return for peace. That is no longer the case. And left and right in Israel is increasingly secular versus religious. So you have and on the religious element, I shouldn't say that is the sole determinant of left and right, but that's now a sort of major dividing line. And when we say religious, we're talking about national religious, that is, people who go and join the army and are very patriotic, and ultra-orthodox, who historically have stayed away from the military. And in the mind of the secular forces, those two are kind of working together to remake Israeli society in a way that is threatening to them. What do you say to that?
That it's a sound observation. I can contribute a few more about right and left from a video that I sent you last night that I recommended you listen to with Irit Linu, who, by the way,
Oh, I did not. I saw you sent that to me, and
yeah,
I started to listen to it, and I fell asleep.
Irit is one of the sharpest pundits, and she really likes you, Mike. You know, she said you are the sweetest goy, she said.
Well,
So
she
that's because
clearly
she listens to us.
she clearly has a very discerning intelligence. This is
Very. And so
yeah.
here is what she says about left and right. I remember at least two of her observations. She said, the litmus test is, do you think the conflict with the Palestinians is geographical or religious? If you think it's geographical, you're on the left. If you think it's religious, you're on the right. Secondly, her second test is, who are you more afraid of, the Arabs or the ultra-Orthodox or the Jews? If you're more afraid of the Jews, you're on the left. If you're more afraid of the Arabs, you're on the right. So, and this is a very, very reliable, test. So I think that behind these witty slogans that she has is a very, very serious observation. There is a shrinking crowd who, I would say, tends to globalism, and for whom Zionism is only very thinly Jewish. This is also a quote from the same Irit Linu, who once said, what they aspire to is actually Sweden in Hebrew. They don't have any other affiliation. And that, I now remember the third. So let me finish, and then you can comment. And then she says, Israel also is divided between right and left according to this litmus test. Do you come from the Holocaust or do you come from the Bible? Do you think Israel is here because it's an answer to the Holocaust, or do you think Israel is here because this is our homeland and the origin of our people? And I think these observations
very interesting.
hold very well.
Yeah, they're very, very interesting. Tell us a little bit about her, because I actually do not know who she is, and she's very sharp. You're saying
she is first of all, she's one of the leading panelists on one of the leading shows, The Patriots. And The Patriots, I think we
Well, this is
mentioned on this
Channel
show.
14, Yinon Magal.
Yeah, and it revolutionized Israeli TV because the right is usually gloomy, and Yinon Magal is just this exuberant, jolly guy.
What we don't need we to talk about this now, but this is something I don't understand. It's the same in the United States. The right wing, and I'm not talking about the establishment right, but the sort of intellectual right. It's always 5 minutes to midnight. The republic is always about to be destroyed.
And this
And
is
it's not,
Flight
and with the,
93.
and yes, and Flight 93, that's right. And it's not just the republic. The United States is the only defender left of civilization. And if the republic falls, all Western civilization is gone. I hate this way of seeing the world. I hate it. I really but why is it that right-wing thought is like that? I don't know, and maybe you know. We can talk about it later.
I don't, and we can talk about it, but also note that Donald Trump is not exactly like that. He's not at all doom and gloom and
That's
make America great.
It's one of the attractive things about Donald
Yeah,
Trump.
yeah. The Make America Great Again is not Flight 93. That's a very big difference. So Irit is a pundit on that show, and she has a very sharp sense of humor and a very original way to look at things, also great confidence. And I am friends with her for a long time. We used to be together on the left. She was a fiery leftist once upon a time, and we liked each other since. And both of us moved to the right. And what happened? Our contribution to the right is that we're arrogant. The right in Israel is always beat up. It's always it looks like it just got a rolled newspaper on its nose from the real owners of the house.
That's the whole. If you're from the intellectual right, and I would include you, although you used to be an intellectual and now you're right wing, I would say you still have some intellectual tendencies. And the problem you have, because I see that in America. All of the commanding heights of the cultural apparatus, they're all owned by the left. So if you are a right-wing intellectual, then you really are a guest in somebody else's house. I mean, you can never feel like you own the show because you don't. You just don't.
And so, but we came from the proprietor's class, and although now we are ostracized as traitors and receive a lot of fire, it didn't manage to quell our sense of superiority. So this is a contribution that we keep making to the right. And Irit is a lot of people on the right call her fondly the Queen Mother, because she's royalty in many senses, and also she's a very modest person in person. She's just and has a wonderful.
And so it's not. So you're being facetious, of course. You're saying intellectually confident, but pleasant as a human being.
Yeah, very pleasant. She's my dear friend. I had her on my podcast. By the way, when I had her on my Hebrew podcast, I think she was second only to Netanyahu in terms of the amount of views she got, because
I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, please do. So this is
and by saying that, I admit that I'm not in command of your entire oeuvre in Hebrew.
That is a flaw to be corrected, Mike. I hope until our next episode. Right. So next we plan to talk about the meager references to Israel in the presidential debate that shook the earth in the United States.
Oh, I think we should talk about the debate a little bit, just in general, because I think this was a
landmark,
an earthquake. It was. Yeah. I mean, there's politics in America before the debate and after, and it's going to have huge impact on the Middle East, or at least has the potential to. So we should just talk about that a little bit.
Sure.
And so let me report. First, Gadi, that something happened when there was this debate between Trump and Biden. Many Democrats discovered that Biden might be slipping mentally. that he is not the same man that he was, let's say, just 4 or 5 years ago, even 2 years ago. If you listen to his speeches when he first became president, and now you can hear that his voice is not the same voice, and his demeanor is not the same demeanor.
But he has
And
a cold.
this,
He has a cold.
well, yeah, it was exacerbated by the cold, of course, but no one noticed this until, until the debate. And now, all of a sudden, the next day, the entire op-ed page of the New York Times says he's got to step down. The left is in panic mode because they thought, the number of there are a bunch of clips going around on Twitter which are hilarious of senior pundits and also people from the political world testifying to the incredible sharpness of Joe Biden, and that the idea that he's slipping, this is of course just a right-wing conspiracy theory. It's a slur. It's these just in complete command of everything when you're sitting opposite the table from him. And now a lot of those same people are now saying, no, he's got to go, he's got to go. So they have indicted themselves by this, which I find enormously. I just sit and I read the stuff that's coming out now, and I giggle.
Can I read to you? Can I read to you something from the monumental piece by your much admired journalist Thomas Friedman, who wrote that Biden is a good man and he should go home. And then in the middle of this piece, let me read this to you. I had been ready to give Biden the benefit of the doubt up to now because during the times I engaged with him one-on-one, I found him up to the job. So he's still lying. He's still lying now.
Well, he can't. I mean, this is the whole dilemma they have, is that if they admit what we can all see so clearly and have been able to see so clearly for a long time, if they admit that, then they admit that they were lying before or duped. But I don't believe they were duped. They knew they're trying to maintain the power for the
so
for the
maybe what I hoped would happen in 2020 would happen now, when the Hunter Biden laptop was revealed by Rudy Giuliani back then. We thought Joe Biden is done. And then, to the amazement of everyone, the whole media class headed by Twitter and Facebook suppressed this story. And then I think it was Antony Blinken who arranged for 51 experts in intelligence to say that it is probably a Russian plant, and the story was suppressed. The story was just suppressed.
Successfully suppressed.
Successfully. And we thought after the election, people will realize that a story was suppressed. And this was the big story. I wrote this in Haaretz, and there were shouts to close my column, which they eventually did, but not back then, because I was spreading fake news, Mike,
fake news
about the laptop.
Yeah, right. No, look, they succeeded in that though. I was, let me tell you something, some anecdotal evidence, and then something I learned from a guy who actually studies this for a living. I had dinner by chance one time with a couple from San Francisco. This is about a year and a half ago. They were she was worked in high tech, and he worked in real estate. They were very well to do. They had come to Washington, D.C. to manage some assets that they have in the region, and they were well informed generally. I mean, they weren't news junkies, but they followed the news. And they were intelligent people. And what happened? You have this conversation, I'm sure, about once a week. They said to me, it came out during the dinner that I had voted for Donald Trump and was not embarrassed by that, and that I have right-wing views and so on. And they said, yeah, help us understand. I mean, you seem like a normal human being, and yet you have these ridiculous views. How can someone who behaves the way you do and talks the way you do actually believe the things you say you believe? And so can support such a horrible man. And so we started talking about it, and I talked about the morals and the norms of the political class, and I brought up Hunter Biden's laptop. exactly in the way that you did, and the suppression of it. And they said, whose laptop? What are you talking about? They had no idea. They had never heard of it. They had never heard of it. And I thought they were joking at first, but then they hadn't. But then I talked to Henry Olsen, who's a columnist for the Washington Post, and he is a bona fide political analyst, who does a lot of, who lives according to the polling and so on. And he said, people don't, this is a non-issue. He said, Republicans like you who want to hammer away on this and think that you're going to get somewhere with the voters on that are wrong, because the voters have never heard of it. They don't know about it. They don't care about it. Only the committed right-wing voters know about this. It is no, but it's true. It's the way it's the way it works. And the people that, in order to win an election, you have to sway votes among the undecided, who are not hanging on the news and are not necessarily watching Fox News, and so you have to address what they know and what they don't know. So it actually, this whole suppression stuff, I mean, people like you and I see it, and we see that the 50 intelligence officials and so on came out and called it Russian disinformation. And that looks to us to be, like you said, the big scandal, and shouldn't everyone be outraged about it? We can think that, but the fact of the matter is they're not going to be outraged.
So now this is not something they can suppress, because the debate now left them.
Biden cannot be so. Biden's dementia, let's call it what it is. Or, I think he's suffering from what they call in medical terms TMB. He's got TMB, which is too many birthdays, right? And we've all, my mother passed away in August. She was in her 90s. My wife's stepfather passed away 2 years ago. Her father a couple of years before that. All of them, they get to this stage in life, the stage that Biden is at, and there are good hours and there are bad hours. And there are a lot of parts of the day when the lights are on, but nobody's home. And it's not, I don't know what to call it, dementia or not dementia. It's just old age, and we've all experienced it. So we know what we're seeing when we see the guy up there looking out in space. We know what that is.
One thing I can tell you about the Hunter Biden laptop: none of the people I know have ever experienced anything like it, like what's in the laptop. It's like it's completely unbelievable. And I'll tell you, because a lot of people after the debate say they feel sorry for Joe Biden. Say, look at him, they're pushing him. He's a marionette in there. He's a puppet, a sock puppet in their hands, and they're pushing this old man who has no clue where he is, and it's just cruel. And I have very little sympathy for Joe Biden, because I read Miranda Devine's amazing book, Laptop from Hell. And what I can tell you is this is a story of huge corruption, and it's terrible. But it's also personally terrible, because you have a son who is a junkie, and you turn him into the cash mule of the family.
Into the bag
man. All this money comes through Hunter Biden, who is sick. He's a junkie, and you completely ruin him. You listen to those recordings. This is a man who has no friction with reality. He lives in it's a nightmare. So if I were to write a screenplay about this would be a heart-wrenching story.
These are going to be there are going to be great screenplays about this.
But later, before,
like 20 years
Mary
from now,
Garland
20 years or 30 years from now.
Yeah, this is after Mary Garland can lay a hand on you, then you can write a screenplay.
It's like The Americans. Did you see that TV series?
No.
It's about It's about KGB agents in the United States masquerading as Americans, and very successfully. It's a good spy thriller, and it tells you what we're up against in terms of our foreign adversaries. Written by under Ronald Reagan and during the Reagan era, and the TV show is Reagan doesn't loom large in it, but it is sympathetic to Reagan, and of course the guys who wrote it are left-wing nuts who who were the same people who were telling us that George W. Bush is evil, and that what the left does is every Republican president when he's the actual president and has power is either stupid or nefarious, devious, stupid or devious, or some kind of combination of the two. And then what they do is they resurrect them about 20 years later in order to say, how come? And then they say, by resurrecting them, you show as a left-wing analyst, you show that the fact that you are saying nice things about a Republican shows that you are an objective observer. You're not a partisan. And then you establish your bona fides as an objective analyst, and then you take the picture that you have just created of this completely acceptable and conscientious and maybe even laudable Republican president, and you hold him up in order to compare today's Republicans with the ones we used to have, and you pretend to have nostalgia for the ones that you hated 20 years ago but are now pretending to love.
That's so much the same here. It's now the left always has nostalgia for Begin. Now, where is the real right? But Begin, they called him a Nazi, a fascist.
He was a gentleman.
Yeah, what are the day? Begin was an honest right-winger, not like today's corrupt Netanyahu.
Yeah,
and so it's always the same.
Remarkable, their ability to do that. The post facto resurrection. There's an article in that somewhere.
So the debate did mention Israel marginally. It didn't have to do anything with the topic that we said we will discuss, and we have little time for.
We should just say quickly though. I think that for the Middle East, this is a very dangerous moment between now. Look. First of all, what's the result of this going to be? It looks like. A big chunk of the Democratic establishment came out after the debate and said they were in panic because they felt that they might lose power if Biden stays the nominee, and they said he's got to go, but he clearly doesn't want to, and Jill Biden, his wife, doesn't want to. And by the way, the New York Times reported that they went to Camp David, and Hunter Biden strongly advised him not to give up. Don't give up, Dad. So because Hunter Biden knows that the whole enterprise that he's part of could be investigated if he would if he gave up power. But it looks like the family isn't ready to give it up, and it's not. If you start looking into we won't need to go into it here, but into the formal process of removing him if he doesn't want to go. It is very, very complicated and difficult, and it will throw the party into great disarray. If he's not a willing partner in his removal or in stepping down, if he doesn't step down, then it becomes very, very chaotic, and they want to avoid that. He's trying to hunker down.
Can't they threaten him with the laptop? Just that. Can't they say, look, you better go quietly or else we'll just open the gates of law enforcement on you, and we have all this evidence that your family has been taking money from the Chinese Communist Party, from the Ukraine corrupt Burisma company, from the South America. We can nail everyone in your family, especially Hunter and Jim, on a number of things. So be careful.
I don't think after having covered all this up for however many years, to suddenly prosecute a case like that is not going to be an easy thing. They're going to be indicting themselves in a lot of ways if they do, and they're not going to get the trial done by November. So if you're,
no, but it's a threat. They don't have to do it. They
I'm sure that they. Well, first of all, who's the they?
They is Obama.
I do believe that. I do believe that Barack Obama is the most powerful guy in America, but I don't believe that he can just push a button and make things like this happen. I think it's more complex than that. So anyway, I think there will be a very serious effort to remove him, and I think Obama will be part of that. But they might decide when looking at it all that that the lesser of two evils is just to They're starting the new slogan. The new slogan is "It's not the man, it's the team," and the team is great. That's so watch now.
Apparently, it was always not the man, but the team.
But the question is, what will China, Russia, and Iran? How will they read this? Because I think there's no doubt that for the Iranians, life is going to get tougher under Donald Trump. I'm not going to say that it's going to be a complete 180 by him, but being harder on Iran is very much part of his political persona. He was more supportive of Israel in the debate. I think that the Iranians are going to ask themselves, how do I pocket the maximum number of benefits between now and next January?
So escalation in the Middle East has just become more probable. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying that. It depends how they read. I mean, the Middle East is always a complex environment, but it's another in a highly combustible environment. We have a new element of uncertainty. And we have a lot of different players who are watching each other and trying to see how they're negotiating the uncertainty. I think, yes, the simple answer is I do think escalation becomes more probable, but not to such a degree that I can say we're going to have war next week. I don't think we are.
All right. So just one remark about the Israel issue. Trump was evading it, right? But Biden, gave the spiel. It was all lies. No administration has backed Israel so much, and all blah blah. And we only stopped one shipping of ammunition, and all the rest of the lies. He was lying through his teeth about everything. Or the team was lying, Mike. Maybe it was not him. The lies are from the team, which they are, by the way. He looked like he was reciting things that he learned by heart. He looked like the whole paragraphs were.
Frank Bruni, I forgot. I wanted to actually read it out on here. Frank Bruni, who's a super left-wing New York Times writer, he had the best description of what you're talking about, where Biden had all of these talking points that he had learned in the debate prep, and he delivered them very poorly in terms of just kind of referencing them, rather than actually delivering them in a way that the audience can fully understand. But also he delivered them in a rote fashion without the proper context. You could see that really easily. It was like it was like going through an archaeological dig, and you can see, oh, there used to be a beautiful mosaic here, but it's all broken up.
Yeah, but Dr. Jill Biden phrased it beautifully and revealingly. She said, "Joe, you answered all the questions,
and you had all the stats." She said that, and we got to let that. The other part got covered up by the audiences, and you had all the stats at your disposal. Good boy. Good boy, Joe.
And what did Trump do? Well, he evaded the questions about Israel. And many people here interpreted this as, first of all, they think that Trump may be a wild card that we can't guess about Middle Eastern policy. And secondly, that maybe he is thinking of the isolationist wing in his own party and does not want to reveal himself as a too enthusiastic supporter of Israel.
That's certainly true. That's certainly true. He's we have on the right now there's the let's call it the isolationist right. I don't really like that word.
Let's call it the Tucker Carlson right.
There's the Tucker Carlson right, and then there's the traditional right, and Trump is straddling the two. But he did say, if you listen closely, he said, "You're withholding ammunition for Israel. You should give it to them and let them finish the job quickly. So let's get this thing over with." So like, this is the way he's straddling it, because he's telling the Tucker Carlson right that we don't want war in the Middle East, but he's saying to the traditional right that supports Israel, the vast majority of Republicans support Israel. He's saying, support Israel, let them get the job done. And so that's a pro-Israel message, really. But they're right. You're not going to get whether it's a Democratic president or a Republican president, you're not going to get the guy that's going to be perfectly supportive of Israel the way Israelis would want. But I think I think the two things are voter support for Israel in the Republican Party is off the charts, and traditional conservative foreign policy advisors support Israel. Just think about who's going to be in the Trump cabinet, right? The team. You're going to have Robert O'Brien. You're going to have Tom Cotton. You're going to have Mike Pompeo. You're going to have Devin Nunes, and on and on and on and on and on. You're going to have Rick Grinnell. They're all pro-Israel. And they're all hostile to Iran.
So it's not going to be George Papadopoulos and Carter Page this time.
Well, George Papadopoulos and Carter Page will be doing nefarious things in the background, you know.
I'm sure. Last topic, and we have very little time, the escalation in the north. Is there anything new except the increasingly alarming rumors? The last one that I saw on Telegram, that for the first time, Israeli hospitals in the north were evacuating patients to the heartland. Does that mean we're closer to war?
You're a little bit close. Here's my take. I'll just give you my take on the situation, and this is going to be something we can talk about next week and the week after and so on. So there's nothing really burning here. My take is that we are closer to war because the Israeli elite, I don't want to say the elite, the government, the national security establishment, they recognize that it's very unlikely that they are going to get from Amos Hochstein, Biden's right-hand man, who's trying to negotiate a deal diplomatically with Hezbollah, that is going to give them anything like the security they need in order to guarantee to the displaced citizens of the north that they are secure in their homes. And they will only be able to achieve that by a major war against Hezbollah. But they also know that war against Hezbollah will entail much greater damage to Israel than anything they have ever experienced on the home front, because Hezbollah has at least 150,000 rockets and missiles, and 10 or 20,000 or more of those are precision guided weapons. They can overwhelm Iron Dome. They will hit critical national infrastructure, including civilian infrastructure. Israel can win this war, but it will be very damaging. And there's this uncertainty about where the United States will be in that war, and there's this uncertainty about what Iran will do. And so this war with Hezbollah could easily be a war with Iran. We've already saw on April 12th what that was like when Iran hit Israel.
13th.
On April 13th, when it hit Israel with this barrage of ballistic missiles, and Israel was dependent on the United States to meet that, to defend against that barrage. So they look at the totality of this thing, and they don't want to do it. The Israelis don't want war. Hezbollah doesn't want to see the war that Israel would need in order to secure its north. So we're in a kind of what they used to call a Mexican standoff in the movies, where both sides are pointing a gun, and it can be very damaging to both. My guess is that what's going to happen is that we're going to get, sooner or later, we're going to get a ceasefire in Gaza, because we're moving now. The IDF is going to announce in days, if not in days, within a week or two, that the major ground operation in Rafah is completed, and we've moved to stage 3 in the war, where Israel holds the Philadelphia corridor and then the Netzarim junction, and then just carries out raids into the strip. That's going to create the possibility of a ceasefire. Whether that will come or not, who knows? But if there's a ceasefire there, then there'll be a ceasefire perhaps in Lebanon. And then we'll have a pause, and the Israeli military will, I think, start to strengthen itself for the next round. this could all go wrong. I'd say that there's a 75% chance, maybe 70% chance that that's going to happen. There's a 25% chance that it will escalate into something much more.
And things can get out of control very quickly. Mike, the dumbest take on the news. We are there. Maybe before we go there, I should mention that we now have a YouTube channel. If you're not already watching us on YouTube, you can. And if you do subscribe, there was an exponential rise in our
Yeah,
viewership.
I noticed. I didn't understand why. All of a sudden, we had so many more people following us on YouTube or watching us on YouTube. Not that we still need followers. We only have 726 or something.
Yeah, as opposed to 22,000 on Rumble. But
Yeah. So come
a lot of
on.
people are watching. And next week I'll give you the stats on the Hebrew version of this, by which I mean I have someone fitting this show with subtitles, and we are amazingly popular in Israel, Mike.
Really?
People in Israel want to be updated about their own country, and they turn
So
to you and I. Can you
so
imagine that?
how do you broadcast it in Hebrew with the subtitles? You put it on Somer Shah?
I
Shomer
put it
Shah?
on Shomer Saf on my Hebrew podcast channel, and I have a guy who's now working with me to put subtitles on this show and on other shows.
So
And I
we are also Shomer Saf then. Is that what it is?
yeah, we have become regular episodes of Shomer Saf, and people are watching with Hebrew subtitles.
Okay, but if you're listening in English, go on to YouTube and subscribe. It does wonderful things for us. First
Mm,
and foremost of which is it makes us feel good about ourselves.
yes, exactly. So the dumbest take on the news. Has anything dumb happened in the last week, Mike?
It was a cornucopia of dumbness, but the one that I really just grabbed hold of is this whole issue that it's the team at Gadi. It's not just the guy. And so after the New York, all the columnists in the New York Times came out, including Tom Friedman, saying Biden has to step down, there was a rally around Biden effect. And one of the guys who jumped to the forefront to testify to the mental acuity of the president was Brett McGurk. Brett McGurk is responsible for the Middle East in the White House, and he said
That's your old job.
my old job, but he's much more influential than I ever was because he has no chief executive officer. He does whatever he wants. And so
And he wants to preserve that.
he wants to keep it. He's the king of the Middle East. It's amazing. And so he in talking to Axios, he said that oh no that Biden, he's in meetings with Biden all the time, and he's very, very sharp and on top of everything. And in describing the qualities that Biden has that are impressive to Brett McGurk, he mentioned this one. It really jumped out at me. Biden has strategic empathy. What? What the hell is strategic empathy? I mean, this put two words together that sound they sound impressive, but what does that mean, Gadi? What is it? What is strategic?
Let me take a guess. Let me tell you what I think he meant to say. He creates in his interlocutors a sense of friendship, because Joe Biden used to say that everything is personal, and he used to say that he influences as VP, he influenced China because he had real good rapport with Xi Jinping, because he has
so he
many hours
deploys his empathy
in a strategic way.
You're turning this crazy phrase into something that to me it sounds like he's tactical effervescence. Like it's just like putting two words
I'll tell
together.
you what it really is, Mike. If you allow me some locker room,
Yes.
when you're in love with a woman who then you realize is not very bright, then you start making excuses, such as she has emotional intelligence. So strategic empathy is the emotional intelligence of international relations. How's that for an interpretation?
No, emotional intelligence is a real thing. This
Strategic empathy.
yeah. Your
Yeah.
problem, Gadi, this is your problem, actually, in your entire career. Your problem is you don't have enough strategic empathy. You don't, you
Shit.
don't.
wow. Well,
Yeah.
I'm not going to match that. Mine is much less funny. It's Almazak, who's a comedian in Israel, an actress, a very talented one who spoke in one of the anti-Bibi rallies, and she said, when I said to my family I was going to give a speech here, and family and friends, they said, aren't you afraid? And I told them, well, I'm not willing to have my two daughters grow in a place where people are afraid to talk. And so I am here. Like, she is from the heart of the consensus, where all the leftist establishment is hugging her from all sides. And she's pretending to be afraid to speak in a rally where, everybody was cheering this phrase, which tells you everything, right? If everybody's clapping, then you don't need to be afraid, apparently.
She's the actress from Eretz Nehederet who plays
Sarah
Sarah Netanyahu.
Netanyahu, yeah,
So,
in
I
a
mean,
mocking.
she's mocking the prime minister weekly, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that program is considered not just left wing, but also tinged with racism. They keep portraying Mizrahi Jews, Sephardic Jews, as monkeys. It's disgusting in many ways. But this is the establishment, and
What she did. I know this phenomenon well because I spent some time in academia, and I call academics feral sheep. They're herd animals. They're sheep. They're very protective, very meek. But as a
it's
herd,
strategic meekness.
strategic. It is. It is. That makes more sense than strategic empathy. It's strategic meekness, but they become absolutely ferocious when they know that the entire herd is with them. And they're ferocious, but also self-congratulatory for their willingness to stand up and take a bold stance.
Yeah.
It's the most remarkable thing in the world to see.
I have another name for them. I call them the choir of Emile Zola. There is a choir of Emile Zola. They're all speaking truth to power in a choir. It's like
Yes, yeah.
they don't understand that to be Emile Zola is not to be against the government. It's to be alone in something that you are bravely putting forward. They're just a choir. And this is, I think there's a sociological explanation for this. I don't speak about academia at length in Hebrew because I still work there, and I try not to drag.
Yeah, don't do this to show some strategic empathy, Gadi.
Exactly.
Don't
But
don't
but
do this.
there is something about academic sociology, because you have to advance by peer review. And so the
By
phenomenon that
consensus.
Alexis de Tocqueville said about American democracy is, since you don't have anyone to look up to, you don't have role models, what you do is just look sideways and then do what everybody does. And this is the dynamics of peer review. So hence you get strategic meekness. That's all from us for today. Mike, and where
I
are
have
you?
one more. Sorry, I have
Yeah.
one more. This is a topic I've thought a lot about, and I just want to leave you with one more thought about. And this is news that people can use. If there are any young academics out there who actually want a career in academia, I don't know why the hell they would ever want it, but if you want that, let me tell you how you make it in academia. You tell your superiors, your seniors in your field, that they were totally right about everything, but you do it in a new way. That way, because academics like to believe that they think out of the box, that they're innovative, that they're open-minded. They actually believe all these things about themselves. When they're none of these things, but they believe it. But so what you do is you tell them, I say, Gadi, you were always right, but for a reason that you never understood. And then you walk away from the meeting with me and you say, Mike, he's a really an out of the box thinking. He's a very creative. That guy's very, very intelligent. And he had an idea that I have never had before, that I am wonderful.
So enough about me. Let's talk about my work. As they say in academia. Thank you for joining us for this show. Don't forget to subscribe to it either on YouTube or on Rumble, or you also have us on audio platforms. One of them is on the tablet site. The other one, if you are accustomed to listening to any of the other audio platforms, we surround you. We are everywhere. And we will be here next Tuesday to update you about what's going on in Israel. Until then, stay safe.